pretty sure it hadn't happened yet, but
And it
No,
didn't bother
it's,
me.
it opened on the 2nd and elections opened on the 2nd and it is open until the 16th.
okay. I do not expect
Everyone's
to
a
be saying
comedian today, I see.
it is not my plan.
Hey, you retired.
We're live, by the way.
It's 7 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order. Karen, would you take the roll, please?
Commissioner Young,
Here,
Commissioner Miller,
Here.
Commissioner Keen, Commissioner Brink,
Here.
Commissioner Kubal, Commissioner Steeler,
Here.
and Chair Gerard.
Here. We ask if you're able, please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Chair is looking for a motion to approve the agenda as provided or with changes.
Make a motion to approve?
I got a motion. I had a second, but I don't know who.
Second, I didn't say it, but I'll second.
A motion and a second, it's a non-debatable motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimous. Chair is looking for a motion to approve the Planning Commission meeting minutes from our July 27, 2022 meeting.
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Any corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, call all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Next on the agenda is 7739 North Shore Circle, a conditional use permit and variance request. Hold a public hearing tonight. Consider the conditional use permit and they consider the variance request. And presenting is,
That would be me this evening. Thank you, Chair. Presenting this item was prepared by Franny Nielsen, interim zoning administrator. So we have three different requests in front of the Planning Commission this evening. They're all from the property owner at 7739 North Shore Trail North. That would be Curtis and Patricia Kier. This property is zoned single-family residential, and it's in the low-density residential future land use area. And I would just note that the actual location of this parcel is not as that address. It's an unaddressed parcel, which is across the street from the parcel addressed 7739. North Circle North. Did I say trail? I meant to say, thank you for the correction. That'd be North Shore Circle North. So as some background for you, the Planning Commission is reviewing these requests because the applicant has constructed a 520 square foot accessory structure on the property. These are retroactive requests to allow for this structure to remain on the property. The applicant did come before the city in September of 2018 to request a conditional use permit and associated variance to allow for a detached accessory structure on a non-riparian parcel. That is, so an accessory structure normally cannot be established on a parcel without an established principal use or structure. However, the code does permit on a through a conditional use permit these structures in the area around the lake. So they are in front of the Planning Commission to request a CUP for that shed, a variance to the front yard setback, and a variance to the setback for an unclassified water body. That's found in the city's shoreland overlay district. So the staff report does have a table that articulates the variances here. Effectively, they're requesting a variance of 6.5 feet to the front yard setback and 18.2 feet to the wetland setback. The site plan and was reviewed for conformance, and that's how we arrived at these variances that have been requested to the Planning Commission. One of the big differences between now and in 2018 is in 2018, the application was actually withdrawn from the applicant. The item was initially tabled for additional information to be provided on the wetland delineation. And so subsequently, the applicant did have that wetland delineated around the property and has been in contact with the Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District. Staff did provide the request to the district for their comment. The district does find the request to be suitable because the structure is not located within a wetland. It is located near them, but not within them. There's actually, I'm gonna have Karen bring the screen up. I'll be sharing my screen here. And what you will see is the proposed location of what was then the garage, but what will now be the shed. You can see that most of this parcel is covered in wetland, and so there's not really much area you could locate anything else. And so that detail hadn't been confirmed previously, but now has been. And I'm going to switch my screen so that you can see an aerial image that shows the present location of the structure in relation to the property as well, and property boundaries. So on the left side of the screen here, you can see the as-built location of this shed, roughly in the same location as what you saw in the site plan, and the applicant's home is right across the street. So per the city code requirements for a conditional use permit, a neighborhood meeting was held regarding this conditional use permit request. We held that about a week or two ago here at City Hall. We had only one other person show up to that neighborhood meeting, and that person did voice support for the request. So with all of this, see here, I just want to make sure that I'm covering all of the comments. The city engineer also did provide some comments on this request, namely that the applicant get the approval of the watershed district. There are some things with respect to snow plowing that they need to be aware of, and the garage floor needing to be above that, the central line of the roadway. Minnesota DNR was provided the opportunity to comment. They had not provided anything as of the time of writing, and the Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District does find the request to be acceptable. They will need to go through a variance process at the Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed because of the shoreline overlay variance that the city is processing. So it necessitates administrative action on the Comfort Forest Lake Watershed District side. So staff do find that the Planning Commission could make findings that are supportive of approval of these requests, given the topographical constraints on the property, specifically related to the wetlands. And so those findings have been articulated for you and are proposed in your staff report, along with 4 conditions that are proposed as conditions of approval. So I would note that the applicant is here this evening and can answer questions that you have for them as well. That's all I have formally prepared for you. I'm happy to take any questions that you have.
Commissioner Susan?
Okay, I'm a little confused. Are they looking for another new accessory structure, or are they seeking or are they seeking permission to keep the 520 square foot accessory structure that is there?
The applicant is looking to keep that accessory structure, which is currently on the site. They're not proposing a new accessory structure, so there would only be one. And again, this would be a retroactive application. So after the 2018 application was rescinded, this accessory structure was identified on the property by a zoning administrator, and a code enforcement letter and process was initiated at that time. The applicant is currently going through the code enforcement process with the city currently. And I would just say, if you have any questions for them, feel free to ask them.
And may I add a
Sir?
clarification?
I need to follow all the proper rules. Don't go far, though, because you're next.
Okay,
Um,
I just wanted to
we,
clarify a piece of that.
clarify all the questions
Okay.
we have with the staff.
Sorry.
And then we're going to ask you if you'd like to add anything, which sounds like you're able to, so. Kevin?
So Nathan, I just want to follow up on Susan's question. The structure that I see on the screen that you pulled up looks like a 10 by 10 or so structure. And you're talking about a 520-foot structure, which is, you know, on the plan I see in front of me, it shows 26 by 20. Are you saying that that structure that I see on this aerial is gone and there's a 26 by 20 building that's been built there?
No, so what they submitted was effectively the site plan that was previously submitted in 2018. That articulates how far the structure is from the front yard setback. So we're using that document to establish the actual setbacks that are being requested. What they are actually requesting, though, in terms of the accessory structure on the site is this one here you see on the screen, which is the existing 520 square foot structure.
So,
Shaking his head.
okay, I just want to verify.
Okay.
So they're not planning on building a 26 by 20 accessory garage. They just want us to approve that structure that's there currently with the variances if we decide to do that. Is that what you're saying? So that one that I see on the screen is what's there currently, and that's what they're planning on leaving? Or are you saying they want to go and revert to this 26 by 20 plan you submitted?
I would suggest that we clarify what the
Okay,
applicant is
okay,
requesting with the
Okay,
applicant.
thank you.
Yep.
Susan?
When you provided the information to the watershed district, did you also give them the soils information that said that that wetland was filled in to put the shed on?
I know that we would have provided them with all of the information that we had at the time of application. So we would have provided them with anything the applicant provided us to detail their request.
Thank you.
Other questions of staff? So, to Susan's point, pretty much this whole lot has been filled. But then they want to have 520 additional feet or something that will not be mowed, I assume. So is there something else that has to be done here then with that?
My impression was that they are seeking to keep the shed that is currently on the property, and I reviewed this application accordingly. If that is not what the applicant is actually requesting, and they're actually requesting the same thing that they were requesting in that previous submittal, then we need to take a look at this. I would suggest that we table it.
I understand what you're telling me. My question is, it has to do with the watershed saying because it was filled, they need to do something else?
I believe it is that they don't mow 500 square feet of the area
That is currently being mowed.
that is currently being mowed.
Okay. Thank you. Other questions?
No, well, I drove by it today and I was confused the same way because this shows a proposed garage, 26 feet by 20 feet, as well as a concrete apron out in front. I mean, this is going to go in the file or in the records and it's not going to reflect what's there. So that's my only concern or flag that I'm raising, because that shed that's out there, I don't believe is 26 by 20, and I don't believe it's oriented the same way, length, width, as the long direction one way and long, as it's shown here. So I think this survey is problematic for any permanent file or any voting on this issue. But go ahead, Nate.
Chair, if I might request something, I would suggest that we have the applicant clarify what exactly they're proposing here so that we can all review and discuss accordingly.
It's all right with the commissioners. We'll move to that section and we'll come back for further questions for staff. Hi, sir. Follow protocol. We ask you state your name and address for the record and spend a couple minutes telling us about your proposal here.
I'm Curtis Keir. My address is 7739 North Shore Circle North, Forest Lake, Minnesota 55025. Just a clarification, the 520 square feet was the original plan. That's, as you've been stating, the current shed is 16 by 12. And that's what will stay there, the original plan. I have an update with the 16 by 12 shed right on the, if you look at it, it'd be the upper right-hand corner where that shed, where the old garage sits. I'm not sure why that's not on here, but it's on there. I can get that. I already have it in, but I'm not sure why that one's up there. But the current shed is 16 by 12. The 520 was the original plan with apron and all of that. All of that is gone. It's a 16 by 12 shed on block only.
So then, do we know how that sits? Can we get it in better on the setbacks?
It would be, so it would be 16 north and south and 12 east and west in the upper right-hand corner of that existing one. I have one,
I have it. I can show it for the record.
We've
Okay.
lost video here for a second. I always get nervous with technology.
There we go.
there it is. So it's the rectangle in the lower, yep, right there. So
That
that's
shows
where it
20
sits.
by 26.
That's a 16 by 12 shed. The bigger one is the 26 by 20.
Both of these are going to be there, Ben, is what you're requesting.
Pardon me?
Both of these will be here. You're keeping the 16 by 12 and wanting to build the,
No building, nope. The 26 by 20, the 520 was the original plan. That one necessitated groundwork, concrete work that was not going to get approved. So that's completely gone, but the new shed of 16 by 12 is just, it's shown sitting here, but that's the only thing that will be there. There's nothing to be built, no groundwork, no concrete, nothing else.
Susan?
Sir, when did you put the 16 by whatever shed on that property?
I think it was the fall of 2019, October of 19, I believe it was.
So you came to the city and you requested permission, and then you withdrew it, and you built something, and now you're asking permission to keep what you built.
Correct? I do have more comments around that, but
Feel free.
Yeah.
the original timeline I was doing this, I was getting a hold of contractors, and when I went through this committee, it was okay subject to the wetland variance, which I wasn't even aware was needed until 2 days before this meeting. So I was doing everything in arrears at that point in time. So when I contacted the wetland district, that's when they told me that if I'm doing groundwork, that it wouldn't be allowed. So I couldn't do the concrete, I couldn't do the base underneath it. So then I started calling contractors again and asking them what I could do, what I could do and what I couldn't do without groundwork. So, if it's a shed on block, could I still get back to 26 by 20? So I was talking to contractors, and they said, if you're gonna go that big, you're gonna have to do concrete work. And one of them told me that if you go under 200 square feet, then it doesn't need a permit, and you can just put the shed there. So I did that. I found out last year that is inaccurate. You still need to meet everything else. So I didn't do it intentionally, knowing that I couldn't build a garage. I knew that if it was smaller, that it didn't need a permit, but I had incorrect information.
Chair Gerard, if I might add something, the building code does exempt permits for accessory structures less than 200 square feet. So that is accurate information. However, we do have the zoning code provisions that would prevail. So just at least supporting the applicant's statement, it may have gotten the information that a permit was not needed for the structure. However, we would have still required it to be conforming to the setbacks in place.
I thought there was only 120 square feet.
Sorry, if I might jump in, the city's zoning ordinance does require a zoning permit effectively for a structure between 120 square feet and 200 square feet. At one point in time, the state building code required a building permit at 120 feet. At one point, that was eventually moved up to 200 square feet. The city's zoning ordinance still has that 120 square foot threshold. And so between 120 and 200, again, that's where your zoning permit is required. And then above that is the building permit, and there's zoning reviews with building permits.
For a while, and even right now, there's some inconsistency and gaps. We acknowledge that.
Kevin?
I'm sorry, you mentioned, Curtis, you mentioned that it's on blocks. Is it like a block in one corner, a block in the other corner? Is it a concrete block foundation? Tell me about what it's sitting on currently.
They're like little 8x10, one in each corner, they're only about 2 inches thick. It's sitting, that's why it's sitting in that spot, it's on the highest point, so there's one in each corner, and it's still, that's all there is, they're about 2 inches high.
So potentially, if we didn't approve the variance request, you could jack that up and move it so it doesn't need a variance.
I don't know where I would be able to move it if I didn't get a variance, though. I'm not sure what you mean by
Well, I
that,
mean,
sorry.
you know, it's, the reason we'd be looking at variances is because it's too close to the setbacks on either the front or the side. If we move the structure more towards the center and back, it might not need that variance. I don't know without looking at all the details of the plan.
It would still need a wetland variance.
Sure, I understand that.
Okay. And the wetland people wanted it here because it's on the highest part of the property. I knew that from when I talked to them last time.
So that'd be the Forest Lake Comfort
Yes.
Lake, Forest Lake watershed.
Correct.
Thank you. Other questions?
Your Honor, if I can address the soil sample piece too, if you wish.
We're always here to be educated, so.
Sounds good. So when I went through the wetland delineation and all of that, they actually did comment on, because that was one of the last questions at the, I think it was fall of 18 meeting. So they want to know, because there was fill hauled in. It's on that wetland delineation report. I think it's the front page, it was an add-on. And they said since the wetland, or the fill was hauled in, I think it was early 80s, it was before their watershed rule comes into play with regard to that. So they said it was basically grandfathered in, but it is on that report.
Don, did you have a question?
Well, I just wanted to kind of follow on Commissioner Young's. One of the real difficulties in front of us right now is that this came before the commission prior. It got kicked back for more information or whatever it was we needed. In the meantime, went and built the structure. And now, if we are to approve this today, we might as well put up a sign on the front of the building that says, go do whatever you want, and come in after the fact and ask for an okay, because that's kind of what happened. I'm just saying that's what we're up against here, sitting here today. Yeah, I mean, Commissioner Young, yeah, I think that's what she was driving at, and that's what I see.
And my concern is that you were asking for the conditional use permit, so you knew that there was a zoning issue, not just the size of the building issue. You were asking for the conditional use permit and the variance in 2018. So you knew, so it could be believed that you knew about the zoning issue. And because I'm pretty sure that the staff report would have talked about the zoning issue as opposed to the just size of the building and some of the wetland stuff. And we've had challenges with people being, not you, but other people being told no and going away and then coming back and saying, whoops, I guess I need forgiveness, please. And our decisions end up setting precedent. So what happens with one property affects how this decision has to be made for the next one and the next one. That's why I'm sighing. I'm challenged here.
Nathan, it's just basically an unbuildable lot. You know, I'm looking at where the lines are for the wetland delineation. and-
It's, looking at the wetlands on this site, it's, yes. I mean, for all intents and purposes, it's relatively unbuildable.
Even though it looks fine, because it's had fill. Part of this wetland delineation is the filled part.
Yeah, so the applicant did address the fill piece of it, but yeah, the that fill would have been really the only reason that any part of this site is really upland.
So I guess my question is that 1.84 delineation line, is that in that, when we look at the other picture where we show the bulrushes and whatnot,
Yeah. That would be where that boundary is in reality. When we look at this aerial, you can see a pretty close, pretty symmetrical with what you see in the staff report in terms
yeah,
of the
so
boundary.
all of the filled area is sort of technically outside the wetland, is what they're saying, right? What this delineation line is saying?
Yeah, so anything that you see that is effectively in the aerial mode, that's not
In the
wetland.
wetland,
Yes.
okay.
And just to reiterate what Abby was saying, the watershed will be requesting the applicant stop mowing in an area equal to the area of the accessory structure.
So in this case, since it's a 12 by 16, it'd be about 200 square feet.
Yeah, the same area of that structure.
Susan?
Nathan and Abby, if we are to grant a 1.8-foot setback on the wetland variance setback, what is your perception of our ability to enforce wetland setbacks in the future?
I guess I'll start by answering this and invite Abby to jump in if she has any opinions on it. I think that these variances are always reviewed on a case-by-case basis for what's being proposed and whether it does meet the criteria. In this case, the applicant is permitted through the code and through a conditional use permit to establish an accessory structure on the property. Given the fact that the parcel is almost entirely wetland, it's very difficult to locate a structure anywhere on it that would be within that 20-foot boundary. So in this particular case, it does seem reasonable to establish findings that would allow for the establishment of that structure. But again, a lot of these are case-by-case basis, and we understand that when people see something next door, they obviously, they're wondering if they can get the same thing. So we do understand that that does occur.
But it can only be there if we also, in addition to the wetland setback, approve the conditional use permit.
That is correct. Yep.
Thoughts,
May
ma'am?
I clarify one thing, please?
Sure.
The 1.84 again is on the original 26 by 20, so it's 10 plus feet off from the current shed. If you go back to the other one.
Oh, I see what you're,
I don't have that in my packet.
But it would still encroach on the 20 feet. It may not be 1.84.
Correct.
It's going to be.
That is correct.
Maybe 6 or 8 or,
It'll be about 10.
yeah. And even if you were to rotate the building, you could probably meet the 30-foot setback from the road by rotating the building, because previously we were only encroaching 8 feet onto it, and we're now 12 feet versus 20, which is 8 feet difference if you kept it back. So that variance could be done away with by rotating, I would think. And if there's any structure on this thing, it's going to have a wetland variance. I mean, I don't think you put anything on here without encroaching on the 20 feet from the wetland, unless it's very, very small. But I'd need some dimensions on this, but anyway.
so that part of the shed that is, I would call that the north side, I think, to the right. How far is that from the wetland? Because that becomes the closest point, correct?
It's north and south as it shows, so the east side it's about 8 feet from the wetland.
What was that?
I was wondering if you also had a response to my question.
Oh, I'm sorry. With regard to precedence, let's say. I agree with Nathan that every request needs to be viewed in its own circumstance, and we look to see if there's practical difficulty that's been established. Is there a uniqueness to the property, what they're looking to do reasonable, and will it alter the character of the neighborhood? Those are our grounds for granting a variance. Character of the neighborhood, there are other accessory structures across the street from these, from this, along that same side. Is what they're looking to do reasonable? It's a fairly small size, non-permanent structure, so we don't have a foundation. It is one of those that could easily, I guess, define your definition of easy, be moved. So then you're really looking at is this, so what did I say? What they're looking to do reasonable, uniqueness to the property, and not alter the character of the neighborhood. So then you're kind of looking at that uniqueness to the property. If this request became before you today, I think that's always the hard part, is separating out the violation that has occurred. And if this request came before you today, would you consider it reasonable to put a non-permanent small accessory structure on an accessory lot, within a half dozen feet of the wetland? Is that reasonable? Is there some uniqueness there? I would say that this is maybe a mildly unique in that there is that grandfathered fill that allows for that area. It's a little different than wetland just hanging out, not disturbed. But I think that is the question for this commission is, are you concerned about precedent setting, though each one is viewed in its own way? I apologize, I didn't realize you were looking for a response from me.
I guess my concern, folks, is that there are other properties along North Shore, along other areas of the city, where there's a house on one side, and on the other side of the road is property that is not usable because it is wetland. And so outside of the fact that if we approve this, we have to make changes to these, to the variance requested. Because what I just heard is it's not 1.8 feet, it's gonna be other things, so we need to make those changes. But then we really are looking at are all the other properties just like this, that have buildings on one side, but the other side of the road, they can't build because it is wetland. Do we then say, okay, well, they're also very unique and folks aren't being able to use part of their property because it's wetland? So yeah, we'll let them build too. And I'm struggling with this one. Because it's very prevalent in Forest Lake. The situation is very prevalent.
Very prevalent on North Shore Circle.
All along North Shore Drive too.
Yeah.
I had another question that's left my mind.
I'll just ask a question as long as he's there. So I'm having a real hard time only because we're looking at a survey that does not show the shed in the accurate dimensions. And so you're asking us to approve a variance of 6.5 feet on a front yard, 18.2 on a wetland setback, and I don't see the actual dimensions of the actual building that's here. I see a structure that was proposed at one time, and that's not helping me. And so for me personally to approve this, I would want to see the actual structure on the survey with the actual dimensions, so we know what we're actually talking about, not hypothetically guessing, is it 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 feet? Is it 5, 10, or 20 feet? If you understand what I'm saying. And I don't want you to incur, costs, for a survey, but this is not accurate for me to even make a logical decision. And this sketch does not help, because you had mentioned 8 feet from the sideline, but when you look at the way the shed is drawn, it looks to me like it's 6, 5, or 4 feet away.
All the numbers on there are accurate, so actually, yeah, it's 8 feet from the old one. It's about a foot over, so it's exactly 7 feet from the east sideline. And then the top one, since it's 16 going this way and it used to be 20, it's another 4 feet from the, there should be a number up on there.
Well, there's a 1.84, but it's off the corner, so I don't.
Right.
know if we don't know how far that arc goes out, whether it's another 2 feet or
And again,
4
so,
feet.
and again, for my mind, if that other structure was whited off this survey and you actually had dimensions on there, that might be something easier for me to look at and say, okay, that's what it is. We could do that. So if they went out and measured it by chance, that's what it is, versus now it's 5 or 10 feet off. You follow what I'm saying? That's just me.
Other questions to the applicant? Thank you. We may have further questions. This is a public hearing. The way this will work this evening is anyone who's interested in commenting on this application, we ask that you come up, state your name and address for the record, and spend a couple minutes giving us your thoughts. So once we have heard everyone, we will close the public hearing and bring it back here for further discussion and decision one way or the other here. So we will open the public hearing at 7:37 p.m. Does anyone wish to speak to this issue? I'll ask again, does anyone wish to speak to this issue? Aaron, do we have anyone online or any emails?
I have 2 people, sorry. I do have 2 people that are online right now. I have Laura Evanson and Linda Stefanik. I'm not sure if they want to talk. I'm going to move them over into the meeting and allow them to speak. And Laura, I'll ask you first if you want to speak during the public hearing to please unmute yourself and comment. And I will give you a few seconds to do that. And it doesn't look like she is. Laura, again, if you are wanting to speak during the public hearing portion of the meeting, please unmute yourself and provide your comments. I'll move on to Linda Stefanik. Linda, if you would like to speak during the public hearing, please unmute yourself and speak at this time. And I just want to be clear, in case I'm having tech difficulties, if you wanted to speak and it's not coming through, or you're not able to, please send a message through the chat. I can get that too. It doesn't appear as though I'm having any comments.
Okay. I'll ask one more time. Do we have any emails to read in tonight?
No emails.
And I'll ask one more time. Does anyone wish to speak to this application? Karen, anyone decide they wanted to?
Doesn't look like it, no.
Okay. Seeing no one come forward and no one online, we will close the public hearing at 7:39 p.m. Bring it back to the commissioners for discussion and
Discussion. Looking at the conditions for approval, and I'm looking at the survey, and I think there's a number of things that would have to be changed if we were to even consider approving this. I believe number one, when it talks about the plans reviewed and approved, I think those have to be changed and we should have accurate plans. Number 4, which talks about the 520 square feet, I think has to be changed because we're talking about 192 square feet. If I'm accurate with what we've been discussing. So those are my 3 concerns, is 1, we don't have an accurate plan, and those 2 conditions would have to be changed. But other than that, there's plenty of accessory structures there. I'm not overly concerned about that personally.
Justin?
This is kind of more for my own education, but looking at the criteria for granting a variance, a little hung up on A, only because I'm just wondering whether it be just an inconvenience, only because of kind of what we're talking about. We're talking about a shed. I could see if this was a parcel of land where the home took up a majority of the, and then they needed to put a small, a little small garage on the other side to park a car or something like that. And I'm just wondering at what point is it an inconvenience? At what point, how necessary is it to have, a shed on the other side? Is that something that has to be there that we have to grant a COP for? So you know what I'm saying?
Yes, and that definition changes with the legislature, and I'm not quite sure what the burden of proof would be currently.
So I just mentioned that. I think that's something I'm a little bit hung up on also. We always want to be careful of setting precedents, of course. Personally, I think that this was something that I would see a little bit more of a practical difficulty depending on what the owner is looking for. And I don't know if that's something you wish to speak of why you want to put the shed there, or what's going in there, what the necessity is to have that CUP or to grant that variance. But that's just my thoughts.
Don?
Oh, yeah, I just had another, unless you wanted to speak to that, I had one more.
Nope.
No, my point was, or what I was going to make was, back in September 12th of 2018, the Planning Commission tabled the request because they needed a proper wetland delineation. I think we're basically asking for the same thing because it's a new structure, it's a different structure. We're asking for proper drawings that go with it. So I don't think it's unreasonable for us to table this and get that correct drawing.
Nathan, I've remembered my question. Do we have to grant the CUP, or can we grant the interim on this?
This is a conditional use permit in the city code. So you are reviewing a request for an accessory structure. An IUP wouldn't be the appropriate tool here, it would be a conditional use permit.
I think an IUP would be great. We could grant it, and then 10 years from now when he sells, it goes. But I'm never a fan of CUPs, as we all know. So, and it has nothing to do with your application. It's just that it runs permanently with the land. And that word that I'm trying to say gets to me at times. Susan?
I am very reluctant to craft language that will run with the property and be part of any future deeds on the property with the inaccuracies. Chair, I move that we table this item and allow the applicant to get us correct drawings with a correct request for exactly what variances are being requested.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. It's a non-debatable motion. So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. So what we're requesting is accurate drawings and to work with the city on the requests. And it can come back as soon as all parties are ready.
Yeah, I would say that we build some flexibility into that just so that we have the ability to work with the applicant to make sure we have the measurements that we need.
Susan?
Mr. Chair, it's important to me that when we have the variance request, we are approving the actual number of feet on the variance request so that we are accurate.
That is understood.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for coming tonight. We look forward to seeing you in the near future. Item 7 is 2040 Comprehensive Plan Implementation. I believe this is by our esteemed Community Development personnel, Ms. Whitman.
Esteemed, wow. Thank you, Chair, for the
We're
compliment.
waiting to be razzle-dazzled after you give us mints and everything, so.
Yeah, well, as I noted to a couple of the commissioners when they were coming in tonight, this is a little bit of a recap of what is a comprehensive plan. For those of you that were here when the comprehensive plan was developed, you just eat your mint, sit back, relax. But we do have some newer faces, and the whole intent was just, what is the comprehensive plan? What did we say we were gonna do? Where do we need to go with some of the things that are still outstanding? And a lot of this was a good refresher or a good public input part for me, as well as I'm really navigating kind of the things the city has said they'd do and different commissions that I work with. Just as a reminder, I serve as staff not only for you, but also our EDA, and I assist with the plant or Parks Commission. So there's a lot of integration between the three of these commissions that I'm trying to figure out, and the EDA, figuring out how do we keep propelling ourselves moving forward in the ways we said we would. So a comprehensive plan, in essence, is a 20-year guiding document. It's the vision for our future. Even though we plan for 20 years, we revisit it every 10. But the whole idea is, where do we want to be as a community in 2040? And it reflects the values that the community holds important. Goals and policies focus on a variety of different things, but we have chapters in land use, economic competitiveness, housing, parks and trails, transportation, water resources, community facilities. This plan that we had was, I think, led a little bit by the Planning Commission, but we had some community consultation, community public open houses, community survey, task force, conversations with the community before the Planning Commission made recommendation to the City Council. The City Council adopted it on April 13th of 2020. And I will note, I have heard that maybe the plan that's adopted today may not be the one that this body supported or made a recommendation. This is the plan we have.
That's not my comment.
Okay.
I wouldn't really say that the Planning Commission led this.
No?
It's really done with a couple members from different areas.
Okay.
And then we would review it every now and then.
So it was an advisory committee that, or a task force that worked on that.
That's what I would have called it.
Good, okay. Traditionally, a lot of communities will lean on their planning commission, but I personally do like the task force approach because I think that it pulls in a lot of interests and also can keep this commission involved, but not all of you having to be at the forefront of it, so. But the plan that is here is the plan that we have today. So we have overarching goals to protect natural resources, provide for parks and recreation opportunities, guide land and manage growth, plan for efficient transportation, and create and expand opportunities for employment growth. The administration, so the implementation of the plan, really kind of comes down to the work of staff with appointed and elected officials and in community partnership. I'm a big community partnership person where we can. I think that government can't do everything for everyone, and where we can align our goals with other organizational goals are great. Specifically, the implementation of the comprehensive plan, there's an implementation chapter. And that implementation chapter says we will update our zoning map based on the future land use map, and we'll reconcile inconsistencies between current zoning ordinance and intended future land uses. And then the other way that we appoint, or the other way we implement, is by just utilizing or administering those goals and objectives in our everyday work. And I'll run through some of those and how we're working on that. Amendments to the comprehensive plan come before this body, before going to the City Council and ultimately to the Met Council. Part of the reason that I'm bringing this up too is this is our guiding document. But I am already in conversations with the Metropolitan Council about the 2050 plan. I know it's 2022, but the Met Council is already, based on the 2020 census, they are starting to develop what are called system statements and community classifications, and that will go into the Met Council's regional plan. And once the Met Council develops their regional plan, then they look to the cities by about 2025 to start working on our comp plan. So no, it's not a 5-year-long planning process, but there's steps that get taken through those last 5 years of this decade. So it's good to review now, see where we're at. The League of Minnesota Cities has this really great diagram called the Pyramid of Discretion. And the idea is at the lowest level, or the fattest level, however you want to say it, the base of your decisions, of cities' decisions, is the comprehensive plan. And that's where we have the most creative freedom. Even we have that in our zoning and subdivision ordinances, but as we start to apply and administer our laws, we get less discretion. So we're really at this, still in this area where we have the most amount of discretion. But when it comes to our comprehensive plan, we still have zoning subdivision ordinances that need to be amended. Nice little quote that's actually in our comp plan is that the vision of the plan can only be realized if the plan is used. So the idea is to kind of look through some of our implementation and see what exactly we said we would do and what are some of the areas that we need to start working on. So we currently, as I noted, we are implementing the plan just by reviewing permits, applications, things we do every day. So some of our objectives: retain identified agricultural rural areas, to meet public needs and support goals. So one of the ways that we can do that is expand the level of community functions and services to keep pace with orderly development. And one of the things that reason I put this in here is we've expanded the community development department just by bringing back a community development director position. It's really kind of helping keep that goal at the front through all of our actions. That's my role in being here with you. But aesthetic characters enhanced. We work with property owners to detract from our image goals. We do actively do code enforcement. We do actively clean up properties. We might not do it as quickly as some people want. We might not always get all the properties. We don't know about all of them, and some are really challenging. But these are things that we're doing. We do lot subdivisions when there's utilities available. We require developments to be designed to preserve natural features. These are things we're doing, that we're implementing our comp plan every day. So in your world, you work a lot with land use and development, but there's a lot of goals and objectives in all of the other chapters: economic competitiveness, housing, parks, trails, transportation, that really dip into the Planning Commission's world as much as they dip into the EDA's world or the Park and Trails Commission, Park Trails and Lakes Commission's world. Some of them are, consider park facilities for year-round use, develop redevelopment plans, creative site design. These are all things that, as we work, as staff works, as our commissions work, we're working that each of the commissions are helping do these things where they're appropriate. So the implementation chapter has 2 action items. One is update the zoning map based on the future land use plan. So I've included a copy of the zoning map. I think all of you have received them, or the zoning map, within the last few months. This is our current zoning map. Actually, I think it might be just slightly outdated. It looks like this is a May 2021. This is from the comp plan. It can't be from the comp plan because the comp plan was developed a year prior to that. This is the one that's currently on our website. But this is our future land use map. And our future land use map says, okay, well, this is our current zoning, but this is kind of where we want to be. And we've done some analysis to look at where there are inconsistencies between our comprehensive plans land use map and our zoning map. And we have identified, and I don't believe this is a comprehensive assessment, but everywhere that's kind of got that neon green, I don't know how color blindness works. I hope you can see the neon green. But those are the areas that we know we have to do we have to rezone so that those properties are consistent with the future land use map, that those properties can develop or new businesses or uses can go in that are consistent with the comprehensive plan. The other section of the implementation chapter is to reconcile inconsistencies between current zoning ordinance and intended future land uses. So there are some zoning code changes. One has been this need or this discussion of a need for alteration to the mixed residential district, that low, medium density residential district's future land use and what that really looks like in the future. And then just that idea that we'd be consistent with the market demand. Another one that's kind of come up is the review. Yep.
Consistent with the market demand or consistent with the city's vision demand?
Well, it's both. I think that the conversation started that there is the city's vision, but we are learning that there is a market demand for adjusting that residential district. But this is, to your point, a presentation on implementation of the comp plan. And you're right, that it is about consistency with our vision. Thank you. Review of the Highway 61 corridors. So a lot of the future land use map calls for mixed use along the Highway 61 South corridor. That current zoning allows for multiple family, but does not require mixed use. And so what we're actually seeing is a lot of these developments developing as mixed use, or I mean, as multiple family. However, we're starting to see that there's a demand for highway business, limited industrial uses, and we have a lot of land area through there that might be able to be considered. So that's another area that we need to explore of how could we maybe incorporate different uses into that Highway 61 corridor to make sure that it meets the community vision, but can also support the economic climate that we have today.
And so then would you be looking to clarify better by having different zoning districts down there?
Yep. I mean, that would be the conversation is right now, those areas are guided for residential and rural. Not rural, agriculture. That they're zoned that. They're guided for mixed use. What we're seeing along that 61 corridor is those properties that are guided for mixed use are leaning towards multiple family. And as they are leaning towards multiple family, we're not seeing them as mixed use properties. We're getting less commercial development than we thought we would along that corridor. So there needs to just be a question, does that mixed use district need to be tweaked to require mixed use? Is it that we want to continue to see mixed use along there and we really would like to see commercial along there? Those are some conversations we just have to have regarding that. And then the possibility of creating districts that align with future land use map categories, specifically when it comes to public, institutional, and park and open space. We don't actually have a zone for park and open space. All of our parkland is zoned as the underlying or adjacent residential districts. That's not a bad strategy, but at the same time, the question is, do we want to make a declaration that this is going to be park and open space forever? These are conversations that just need to be had to be able to make sure that we're being consistent with our comp plan. MXR1 alterations, I know you've had a year-long planning discussion about this. However, single-family residential development and the underlying property sales are all at a standstill. Development patterns are changing the community character. We are seeing more multifamily residential coming into the community. So as part of the MXR1 discussions, it really needs to be that conversation of what do we want the community to look like in these areas and how is our density going to be balanced out, if not how it is called out for in the comp plan. So some opportunities are just reducing some inconsistencies in the MXR1 district. MXR1 district allows for 3 or 4 different minimum lot sizes. It's kind of an if this, then that. Really analyzing if this, then that, is that really necessary in 4 different? I don't know, I'm new here, I can just pose that question. However, I am reviewing all of the past discussions. I won't reinvent any wheels or hopefully not rehash another year's worth of discussions. Yeah,
Abby, you say that the single-family residential development is at a standstill in this MXR1.
Yep.
Do you have submitted, do you have builders that are wanting to bring plans forward, but they are not bringing them forward because we have to decide what we're gonna do? Is that what you're saying?
there's a combination of factors. We have about 4, maybe 5 active developments in the MXR1 district that are at some sort of planning, either at concept phase, preliminary plat. We have one that is at the time of final plat, but there's just, I mean, there's some market demands that are also affecting this. We're not gonna lie, this isn't just us. There's also some environmental considerations here. But what we're seeing from every one of the single-family residential developers that are coming in is that the lot sizes that they would like to see, we don't have within our community.
So what you're saying is they don't want to bring them forward to us to see if we'd approve variances or CUPs for them?
Well, it's, yeah, I
Or
mean.
PUDs for them? I'm sorry.
PUDs, yeah. Yeah, I think it's just kind of tricky because they end up spending quite a bit of funding on engineering that bring a concept plan and then we kind of hash through and they go back, and there's just been a lot of back and forth, and where really the use of PUDs should be for more special circumstances, to be protecting natural resources or some sort of unique site considerations or multiple buildings on one lot. I don't know all of our PUD standards here, but it's not a good tool as a substitute for zoning.
So your preference would be that we go into these areas and give you defined guidelines?
It is more preferred from an administration standpoint. From staff standpoint, every PUD is its own zone. So the administration of just on that individual lot, what they could do in the future, you're constantly having to go back to the PUD, where if you have standardized zoning, it's a lot easier to administer in the future. That's just one benefit.
And even if we did that, they could still come and ask for a PUD
Correct.
change because they might want smaller yet.
Yep, it still could occur. And then again, an opportunity, alter minimums to meet market demand or the community vision. But that's, it's, the question is our vision really aligning with what, at least where we said we would be exploring someday? Highway 61 mixed use corridor, again, some of the issues. We've got this multifamily development that's really being promoted right now. We've got some permitted, unpermitted, non-residential land uses that just might not be the best fit along through there, or there might be some that are not permitted that we'd like to include along there. And we've got also the challenge of just our infrastructure staging. Our infrastructure only goes to Headwaters Parkway. There isn't the ability to kind of keep extending it further south right now. And then what do we do in that time period between now and 2030, and then between 2030 and 2040, that we might still allow some of these landowners? Because what we're really seeing is these large lot agricultural landowners, a lot of them are getting ready to sell, and they're having trouble because we're not really, our codes, our zoning code and our comp plan really aren't aligned with the market and what it wants to do now. Now, that being said, we plan for the future. And it's not always about what we want to do now, but we need to be considering whether or not there should be some amendment to be able to help promote development, help promote the expansion in this area. Yes, Commissioner Young.
We've had a couple of folks that were interested in developing their property, and they expected the city to provide the water and sewer and roads at city expense. And I think that there is some education that's needed, because it is, in this city in particular, the entire city does not contribute to water and sewer infrastructure.
Right.
And for the residents who are on water and or sewer to bear the cost of fronting and paying the capital cost of that infrastructure that they will not directly benefit from, but will result in higher fees to them to pay for those capital costs and the carrying of the debt burden, I think that there is some, and developers have been very clear, city, you're supposed to make all this stuff, and then we'll come take advantage of it. And that's something that if that's what the city wants to do, and I understand that there are folks that think that we should be developing those areas now. But we need to figure out how those residents then are going to pay for it.
Or those developers are going to pay for it. One of the things that, as part of kind of the highway mixed use corridor, this Highway 61 study, Washington County Economic Development Agency does have what are called pre-development grants that can help us explore the alternatives that we have through here. So we've done a lot of the land use assessment through here, like kind of a, if this gets changed, what happens with the rest of the community and the, some of that's all been done, but really when we start to think about other things about pre-development, how do we finance utility infrastructure? How do we, we put it in and those developments pay it back? Some of those things are things to explore as we look at how we can expand to 2030, our 2030 MUSA boundary.
State law changes have made that very difficult.
They have. Yes, they have.
We're not allowed to, for instance, when we've had, Paul, you'll remember this, we had developers contribute to signal enhancements and intersection enhancements.
Oh, yeah.
Because their developments were going to be a big piece of those signal and intersection enhancements, and we were sued and lost because those developers were not to be held accountable for their piece of a future need.
Yeah, my understanding is that we can't necessarily apply development fees based on a future project, but they can be assessed on a past project. I don't know the terms of all of this, but these are things that we would like to explore as we start to look at that growth along the 61 corridor. It might not be necessarily what we envisioned, but those properties are going up for sale, and there are landowners that would like to sell. We also have existing long-term businesses that want to stay in the community and need acreage. How do we maybe marry the two in a way that aligns with our community vision, that doesn't necessarily impede our future, but also doesn't shoot ourselves in the foot or our people in the foot in terms of the cost of public infrastructure, of future land use, those sorts of things. Yeah.
Abby, you mentioned a minute ago, a little while ago, that right now our infrastructure kind of ends at headwaters.
Yeah, I believe that's
maybe I misunderstood a while back. For some reason, I thought we were approved, you could actually develop right now up to 190th. The Met Council has approved that, but we don't want to do it because as a city, we can't support the infrastructure for that.
That is true. So our infrastructure stops at headwaters. We have approval through 2030 to develop to 190th.
So if somebody came in and wanted to develop that at their expense, they could.
Yes.
Just wanted to be clear.
Yep.
Because, we're very proud of the fact that our sewer and water funds are in fabulous shape. And one of the reasons is that it's a pay-as-you-go program. And if you're bringing in a problem later, we can't charge them for it. So it would be a pretty fundamental shift. Again, the Planning Commission isn't involved with money, yes, per se. But I don't think the council would jump all up. I know they won't jump up and down about expanding all of that without some way of recouping it.
Oh, yes, indeed. And I wouldn't advocate for that in any way. No, at all. That is not sustainable.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So the water treatment facility that we are working on currently,
Yes.
would that support infrastructure up to developing through 190th Street?
My understanding is the current water treatment plant will support the demand to the 2030, it might be 2040 MUSA boundary.
Okay.
and the densities proposed within it, residential and commercial.
And that's part of the reason that a comp plan is implemented, is because the city is planning for the provision of those services. So yes, the city has the ability to serve the development as it has been planned in the comprehensive plan.
Nathan, volume too?
Yeah, my
Got
understanding.
treatment needs covered, but my understanding was that volume and the need for another well is still a challenge.
My understanding with the most recent water treatment plan is that the city does have the capacity for the volume, I think at least to 2030.
Yeah, I believe to the 2030, yep.
Because they're talking another water tower south here, right?
Right, and those types of improvements would obviously also be coinciding with future development. As you know, if it happened really rapidly in some communities, that is the case where development just happens extremely quickly. Like Cottage Grove would be an example of that in the metro area. They outpaced their comp plan and then had to make some adjustments, but you do see those types of improvements coming along with that type of development.
And then, you know, some of the opportunities in that area is expanding our site design guidelines or standards. We have design standards, and maybe it's possible that some of the uses we didn't necessarily envision along there could be incorporated through the 61 corridor with greater design standards. So some code amendment just kind of processed. This month, we're gonna just be discussing code amendments. You're not gonna like me, but our next meeting is just gonna be, let's talk about code. We might even do it in a workshop setting style upstairs, but we don't have any applications. And really, I really wanna dive, yeah.
We want to know if it's going to be on the deck.
With a barbecue.
Oh, I'll ask if
I'll
we can
grill.
film
You guys
out
provide the
there.
food.
I'll
You
ask
gotta
if
do
we can film out there.
Bring brownies.
Okay, there we go.
But just a potluck, right? But really, let's revisit what we've already been talking about. Let's see what else might need to be amended. Additionally, through the end of August, September, we'll probably be talking with the council and the EDA as well, just touching in with them. Some of the things bouncing back and forth. We'll probably have a draft ordinance for review at your second meeting. I'm not sure if we'll be there with all of MXR1 and potentially the Highway 61 mixed use. But it is my goal to kind of keep moving forward. Yes, Commissioner Young.
Abby, the entire zoning code needs changing.
That is true.
And I realize that you have a deep love and desire on MXR. But we have issues with accessory dwelling units. We have folks that would like to take advantage of the goals of our city with natural resources and be able to do bed and breakfast and tourist-related commercial in some of the larger lot developments.
Have them call me, please.
They're not even bothering because it's not anywhere near our zoning code. So what I'm hoping is, as you're bringing ordinances forward, that we're not just hanging our hat on the beauty of MXR, but that we're also looking at some of these other things. So they're pretty important.
They are, and there is, you bring up bed and breakfast, there is a section in the code that specifically talks about commercial, recreational in the agricultural area and just agricultural tourism. That's something that definitely interests me. We can have that part of that discussion at the end of the month as well. I think that is probably the easiest discussion out of a lot of the discussions that need to be had about code amendments. I'll also note that I have requested a budget expenditure for 2023 to overhaul the entire land usage code. We would do that in conjunction with Lavander, our city attorney office, and with probably some help from Bolton and Mink because they're probably most intimate with our zoning code. But the idea would be that we would, between 2023 and 2024, redo the entire city code with land usage being kind of that first step. So zoning code subdivision, be a big one, but it's one of those things that I've looked at our code and I want to amend it, but our code is in, um,
It's archaic.
it's in poor condition. There's a lot, I've worked in a lot of communities that have a lot of gaps in codes. Forest Lakes code, our code has a lot of overlap, and it's buried and it's hidden, and it makes it extremely difficult to administer. And so I love ordinance amendments, and I want to focus on the comp plan, and I definitely will bring some of those other things into the conversation as well.
What I'm suggesting is that perhaps it be a 2022, 23 thing, so that you're not doing your ordinances in 24, finishing them in 25 for a brand new comp plan 4 years later. Where you got your 2030 thing going.
I apologize. Yeah. What are you suggesting?
I would like to do the big code amendments
Yeah.
that we need to do sooner. We've been delaying them and delaying them and delaying them.
Yes. I would love to.
Karen's heard a lot of those discussions where we have asked, please, let's get our zoning code in order. And
If I could just jump in here for a second, chomping at the bit. There's two things with the code amendments. Number one is obviously conformance with the city's comprehensive plan, which is something that I definitely hear you. It should happen really quickly after the comp plan's adopted. The second thing is simply just this overhaul that Abby is talking about that is a little bit, in some respects, structural. There's a lot of different parts of the code that could be improved. And that is not something that's necessarily associated with the timing of the comp plans as much as it is just doing it because it's the thing that the city needs to do. It's the right thing to do.
thank you.
And I would, just to touch on that, I would argue the zoning overhaul that I mentioned of doing in 2023, 2024 is a structural thing. It's a lot of, is this redundant from this? If not, where does this go? Where, what is the order it gets filtered into? And if this is archaic or outdated, pitch it, next item. It's a lot of, I can't say speed reading. I don't anticipate there being a ton of policy related questions. There will be, undoubtedly will come up against them. I know that we constantly are getting asked by our watershed partners if we're ever going to implement our own wetland buffer. That's going to be a policy-based thing that we'll have to discuss at some point. I would say that that's probably a 23 or later because it's not necessarily a comp plan kind of thing. Right now, my hope was let's get consistent with the comp plan done this year so that we're ready to focus on that zoning overhaul the next couple of years. So that was kind of code amendment process. Map amendment process is kind of getting pushed out a little bit. Map amendments are, city initiated map amendments can be contentious. So a lot of times you end up needing to build in a lot of public outreach and a lot of opportunities to engage with property owners when you're proposing to change something about their property, even if it's something as boring as zoning. So we'll still talk about that at the end of the month, but then probably do outreach through November, December, with maybe that consideration for formal amendments at the turn of the year. I will tell you with both of these are tentative timelines. It's my hope that they're not too aggressive. I think that we definitely have time to build in the time we need to discuss, but I don't necessarily want to be sitting another year from now where we haven't maybe implemented some of the things we said we would with the comp plan. So that's all I have for you tonight. Any questions about my 2040 implementation presentation?
I would vote for a workshop versus that was an option to discuss for was it the code that
At your next meeting?
is that what we were talking about for as versus being in here?
Yeah,
Oh, okay, all right.
yeah, I just would move it up.
We don't have anything that has to be,
There's no items of business on, scheduled for that meeting.
Right, the item you had this evening, or the first item on the agenda this evening would be returning potentially at a future meeting when it's appropriate, but it doesn't have to be at the next meeting.
So it could be a workshop instead of a,
It could, just stay tuned. I'd like to have it in that workshop session, and maybe what we can do is, if there is that agenda item, we act on that recess and go into a workshop. We'll see. We'll keep you posted. I agree with you, Commissioner Brink. It's a lot easier to have those candid conversations when we're all sitting at eye level.
I just want us to remember that the overarching goals that are protect natural resources, provide for parks and recreation, guide land and manage growth, effective transportation. Still waiting on our Met Council to take care of that. And create and expand opportunities for employment growth, and those are in the comp plan. But as we talk about objectives, specifically in the objectives, we talk about maintaining the balance between the expanding urban area, requiring new development to be designed so as to preserve and be compatible with important natural features. Objective to use planned unit development where appropriate to enhance unique design opportunities. And I keep looking for maximized density, and I haven't seen it yet. But I'll look between now and the next meeting.
Certainly. You will not see those words in there.
I'll
You-
look.
well, you sort of get it when you look at the densities that are proposed. When you look at our topography, that's max density and then some.
Then maybe what we do as we're looking at some of our map changes, the Hugo area is seriously dense. And so what if we were to concentrate some of our density where it meets Hugo, take advantage of the new school they're building, take advantage of the possibilities of future interstate access, not at the end of Forest Lake, but there, and put our density there.
Other comments, commissioners? What would you like us to do in preparation for?
I included the comp plan in your packet. If anybody wants printed copies of any of the materials, let me know. I'd be happy to print them off and drop them off your house later this week. I'd say just keep an open mind, take a look at the comp plan, think about what we've envisioned, what we've said we've envisioned, because this plan isn't that old. It's only 2 years old. And kind of keep an open mind when you're coming to the discussions about changes that we need to make because we said we would.
I guess my one request was, we talk about materials, and I'd be for the next meeting, whether it's a workshop. You have 3 maps in here. Could we get those in color a little bigger?
Sure.
And I know we've been given some, and
Yep.
I'd like to see everyone on the same maps.
Sure. We certainly can. I can even check to see if we can get you printed copies of, the comp plan is about 100 pages. It's 50 pages a piece, double-sided. I could probably get those off for you, and those have all those maps in them too, so.
I think we have.
And
the-
Abby, I snarfed the one from the table tonight.
Oh, well, you can take that up with Karen.
Don't we have didn't we get the comprehensive plan? It was done?
You probably did, but
Some
there's
folks did and some folks
a
didn't.
few of the members that tonight that probably weren't here at that time. I don't think Commissioner Steeler or Kubal were with the commission 2 years ago. I don't know about the rest of you.
Important that they have those.
Well, I'll get working off the same documents. And
Yep, we can do that.
other comments, commissioners? Hearing none, we'll move to our other section. Do we have Councilperson Munson on?
She is not
Okay,
unavailable.
I'm sorry.
She is unavailable right now.
Any other esteemed people online I should ask for?
There is not.
Okay, so then Abby, anything else?
Just the first meeting in September has been changed to council commission training session. The city's attorneys are going to provide, a firm will be providing appointed elected training upstairs in the, we call it the community room. It's actually going to start though at 6 o'clock, so September 14th at 6 p.m. Same night you normally have a meeting, it's just we'd ask you to come an hour early, and it would be a 2-hour meeting. I believe you'll be out by 8 o'clock. So the idea is some just training for all elected and appointed officials to help ensure we're staying up and up in the work that we do.
So then, just checking my time, so if our next meeting is a
Workshop.
workshop, then the following meeting would be this training, so it would be 6 weeks before we would see, I'll call it ordinary business.
It might be. As of right now, we don't have any application submittals for that meeting on the 14th. We would already know that.
We're good to go?
Yeah, we've been trying to, and anybody that we've been in discussions with, we've advised that we will have a little bit of a lull before our business meetings. The only other thing that I wanted to note, just a little bit of a congratulations to Nathan. He did pass his American Institute of Certified Planners exam and has now become certified in the American Planning Association. And I know he appreciates that so much.
Thank you, Abby.
You're welcome.
And your company has given you the pay bonus certificate. with
Yeah,
that.
but if you want to say anything to Ryan, you're welcome to.
Next time I see him.
That's all I have tonight.
Well, now that you're so esteemed by passing that, is it now going to be Mr. Zoning Administrator first instead of Nathan, or we still okay on first name basis?
I'm still working for Bolton and Mank, but I really enjoy working with the city, and will hopefully continue to do so. So
Oh, I should note, the city has posted the vacancy for Donovan's position. It closes this, or our first round of reviews for the planner position is this Friday. As of right now, we only have 3 applicants. If you know any young aspiring planners that would like to join the team, let them know, send them our way.
Thank you. Nathan, do you have anything for us?
Not a ton of comments here, just we're keeping things moving here in the zoning office, and thankfully we're making some progress on catching up in permit reviews and things like that for the community. So yeah, happy to report that things are going more smoothly in the zoning world.
You know, and along those lines, I have to tell you, I pulled a permit. I know you guys will all be shocked, but, and it was very nice working with the city. It took a little bit longer than I had hoped, but they're very professional, had good questions, got right back to me. I had some questions when I picked it up, and Corey, I think it's Corey, came out and talked to me, answered all my questions. I thought it was a very favorable experience, and it's not like they know who I am. You know, I'm just a flub walking off the street, so it was really nice working with the city on that. Okay, because we would, no, I'm just kidding.
We'll pause there, though.
Yeah. I'm replacing a garage door header.
I'm just teasing.
Won't it be fun to have?
I
you
know.
over there?
It would be so much fun. What?
Moving on to Karen, anything for us?
No, only I'll say, elections, primaries went pretty well. In precinct 1 and 2, I didn't get any information or feedback from the other precincts, so no news is good news. I'm assuming everything went smooth there as well. We have 3 council seats. We have the mayoral seat that is up. We have and 2 council seats. So filing for candidacy opened on August 2nd, and that will stay open until August 16th. It closes at 5 p.m. So if anybody is interested in running for those seats, come and see me. You have to file with the clerk here at the city office. We have packets out in the lobby. So take a packet, the forms are all in there. If you have questions, you can ask me. We do have a joint powers agreement also with Washington County, so you can always call the Washington County Elections Office. They're able to help, or you can contact the Secretary of State's office for election information.
Has anyone filed so far?
We do have one candidate who has filed. That information can be found on our website. If you go right to the front page of our website, you can use the search bar and type in elections. It'll bring up the screen, click on the link. Or you can go to, I believe it's the tab for resident services and election information. Click on that link. It'll bring you to the elections page. It'll show you everything you want to know about elections here in Forest Lake or around the state. And there's links to Washington County Elections Office and links to the Secretary of State's office. And phone numbers.
Very good, thank you. Justin?
I have nothing tonight.
Kevin?
Two things, Nathan, in regard to the item on the agenda tonight that we tabled, if, let's say that was put to a vote and let's say it was declined, what ultimately would have had to happen with that shed?
Well, there are 3 requests in front of the planning commission. The first is a conditional use permit to have the shed in the first place, and that's probably the most consequential one to deny, because that would mean that he would have to remove it.
Okay, that's all that concerns me. My second question is, in the comp plan, I know it talks about possible water system interconnections with other communities. Do we currently have any interconnections with any other communities besides Forest Lake for our water?
That's a great question.
It's a great question. I don't know. We can get that answer for you.
We tried to have, several folks tried to have a connection with Columbus, and it was prohibited by a previous council, but we may have an emergency connection with Columbus in place.
That's what I'm asking, because
Yeah.
I see no water towers in Columbus.
I think I think part of that is Columbus is all on wells. I think
How much?
on wells. I don't think that they have the density standards that we have here.
The reason I ask is there's a couple of buildings that are being proposed to be built, I believe, that are in Columbus, but they're like apartment buildings.
Yeah, we can figure that out.
Okay, just curious.
That's a fair question, because yeah, I understand, I know what you're referring to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
No, we don't have a sewer agreement with them. When Gander and the Coates things built, they had to have their own sewage systems on site with a pumping schedule, and they had to have not only their wells, but backup water to fight fires in place with tanks. That was ugly.
So that Caribou Coffee that's going in on the corner of 97 is on a well?
I don't know their water system. We can find out some more information for you and get back to you.
Like well water?
Well, I'm just surprised with Caribou Coffee. They have their own standards. But on August 15th, 4:30 to 6 p.m., is there still an open house for 11th
Yes.
Avenue?
Yes, thank you. Yes, next Monday at, what did you say, 5? 5:30?
I had 4:30 to 6,
4:30.
but I don't know
Thank you.
if that's correct. I just wanted to confirm.
4:30, yes,
Okay.
here in the community room
In the
upstairs.
community room
Yep.
upstairs. Okay,
Thank you very much for bringing that back up.
yep.
Susan?
Precinct 5, Karen, went well.
Good to hear.
The only thing was, fully a third of the folks that walked through our door were in the wrong precinct. And that's just gonna be brutal come November. So I'm gonna ask.
I will contact Washington County and let them know. They, my understanding was they sent information out, but that probably is a result of the line from Harrow Avenue being shifted over to Highway 61 when we did the redistricting and then also redrew the map lines. So anybody that was in precinct 4, where that dividing line was Harrow Avenue, that line has been shifted over now to Highway 61. So anybody east of Highway 61 is in precinct 4. West of Highway 61, you are in precinct 5. east of Highway 61, Precinct 4, votes out at Hosanna Lutheran Church. If you have questions, please give me a call at the city office. Did I get that out?
I answered a lot of them yesterday. But I was able to see the Washington County Public Works Director and Assistant Public Works Director because they were helping check us all in last night.
No.
It was good to see them and see them next week.
I have nothing to add, so based on that, Chair's looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion and a second, it's a non-debatable motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimous. Nathan, again, congratulations. The rest of you, thank you for your service this evening.
Love the spotlight. I just thought.
Ooh, I did not see that coming up.